This is $600 Cedrus forged aluminum mast. And this is $1,700 Cedrus Evolution Surf carbon mast. And what if I tell you this $600 aluminum mast might have a better performance than this $1,700 carbon mast? Let's get started. Before we dive in too far deep, I want to share that Cedrus team did send this aluminum mast for demo, but I am not affiliated with the Cedrus team. I'm not getting paid for this review or anything. So yeah, everything that I'll share today will be my own honest opinions. This mast is actually a prototype mast. The production version you will see will have the golden color, but I think the specs are identical, so everything I'll share today will be still relevant. As you can see, I'm a bit of a foil Cedrus fanboy. This is pretty much the full collection that I have. I paid out of pocket for basically everything except of course the demo forged aluminum mast, and I'll share a little bit more on how I ended up get to demo this mast later in the video. So on this side we have the classic mast. This is the classic aluminum and this is the classic carbon. These models are actually not available for sale for new anymore. The Evolution line pretty much superseded that classic line. But yeah, they might be still available in the used market for probably really affordable price. And more than anything, because we have a whole system here, I'll do some quick highlight and comparison what has improved in the Evolution line compared to this classic line. Let's start with the main feature of the Cedrus mast, which is their adapter system. This is common across all Cedrus masts, both the classic and Evolution carbon and aluminum, and they are basically the only universal mast in the market. What I mean by universal mast. So most of the other brand specific mast, I have the Axis aluminum for example. You purchase it and you can start riding the Axis foils, but you cannot really use it with different foil brands. They do sell some of the comparable adapters, but generally the compatibility is a little bit limited because of their specific design of the mast footing that meets with the fuselage. Compared to those brand-specific masts, the Cedrus mast is designed to be universal. So once you buy the mast, any of their mast, you will get those mast and base plate, but then you will also need the adapters that will be brand-specific. So these adapters will just simply attach to the end of the mast, and then now I can go right axis. I can just swap this out. Put the cold foil in, and now I'm good to go on the cold foil. So it's really easy to just switch between multiple brands instead of investing heavily into brand-specific mast and getting vendor locked. Then the other bit is that the repairability, of course, especially for the carbon mast, over time that they can break. And one of the failure point would be this mast to fuselage connection point. And in the brand-specific mast, when that failure occurs, sometimes you might need to replace the entire mast. Whereas if ever this adapter fails, then I can simply replace this adapter without replacing this expensive carbon mast. So those are some of the main design benefits that you get out of every foil Cedrus system that you will commit to. Now let's do a quick comparison between the classic aluminum mast and the Evolution forged aluminum mast. The biggest difference is the adapter to mast connection point. So this is two Axis adapters. So this is for the classic mast and this is for the Evolution mast. And as you can see with classic, it's just like a pretty simple adapter head. And on the Evolution side, there is two extra M10 here. So what these two M10 pins provide is that it really minimizes the movement from the mast to adapter connection point. The classic one gets held by two of the M8 bolts, which is actually pretty solid connection as long as you really tighten it down. But yeah, of course, because it's just two M8 bolts, there still is a little bit of a possibility of a little bit of a movement, and that can be exaggerated by the extra weight on the foil drive, on the bigger waves, like going faster with a high wind speed situation, all of that. So the introduction of these two M10 pins really locks this adapter into the mast, so there is no possibility of any wiggle around. And the connection, this M10 pin tolerance to the mast connection is just so ridiculously tight. It's almost airtight is how well machined these pins are. So yeah, once it is connected and gets locked by the two M8 bolts, there is just simply no way the mast adapter is going to wiggle at all. So the classic adapters are compatible with the classic aluminum and classic carbon, and then the Evolution adapters are compatible with the Evolution Wind, Surf, and the forged aluminum models. And this is the aluminum mast specific, but compared to the classic and the forged aluminum, there is quite a bit of improvement in terms of the build quality, especially when it comes to the water ingress. So the previous version of classic aluminum, the end was actually wide open, it was not sealed. You can see there is a bit of like a white gunk around the end of my aluminum mast, and that is basically my attempt to seal it with the water weld, which worked, but of course a little bit of a cumbersome process. And the other brand also tried to seal their aluminum mast. Generally, at least I know for the Axis side, they put a little bit of a rubber bung, but eventually that started to leak and it became really hard to actually seal it again. So the unsealed aluminum mast or aluminum mast leaking problem is not necessarily Cedrus only problem, but it has a huge improvement on the forged aluminum mast on the Evolution line, and everything is just welded and watertight, so there is no way this thing is going to have any water ingress in the mast, which is a huge improvement. Of course, it comes with a little bit of an extra cost increase, but I think it is totally worth it in my opinion. One more key difference between the Evolution and the classic lines, and this is shared across both the carbon and the aluminum models. When you look from the front side, you can see the profile is slightly different. The classic lines are just basically a single straight line down from top to bottom, whereas the Evolution line, there is like a little bit of a taper. So it is a little bit thicker on the foot side that connects to fuselage and also to the mast base plate connection point. So the idea is by having a little bit of a thicker profile at the top and bottom, it really improves the stiffness, while having a little bit of a narrower profile in the center piercing region gives a little bit extra of reduced drag when you're like slicing through the water. So yeah, it is a pretty neat and unique details. I'm sure maybe some other brands are doing this too, but yeah, definitely a good improvement that you can see in terms of the detailed design improvement from the classic line to the Evolution line. And this is a minor detail, but the classic adapters came with the stainless hex key for M8 bolts, while the Evolution line comes with a gold anodized titanium with the Torx hedge as the M8 bolts. So a little bit prettier, of course not going to rust, a lot stronger. So yeah, a little bit of a hardware improvement on the Evolution line as well. I want to call out a quick feature that is shared across the carbon mast. So both the classic carbon and the Evolution carbon has this feature. And this might be a little bit of like a detailed feature that non-Cedrus riders might not know. The unique feature is that both the leading edge and the trailing edge, you can see there is a little bit of the color change compared to the center section. That is because the leading edge and the trailing edge are actually different material. So the center section is carbon fiber, of course, but then the leading edge and the trailing edge, they are a little bit of this rubbery, hard, plasticky material. So the benefit there is that, of course, it is a little bit more easier to repair and a little bit more impact resistant. So carbon, they are brittle, so in case you hit it really hard or crash into something, then they can crack, and then the repair can be pretty expensive and difficult. Whereas this rubbery material, it's gonna be a little bit easier to just sand it down or potentially even put more material in it. So that will be a lot easier on the carbon side. The other benefit of this rubbery leading edge that not many people think about it is in case of the impact into the mast. So imagine you're falling off of the board and somehow you fell in front of the board and getting hit by the mast. I think this rubbery material will also have a little bit less impact to you than getting hit by the carbon edge. So there is a tiny bit of the safety improvement with this rubbery edge, I would say. That leads us to comparing the three evolution line that is available today. So the surf model is, I think, a little bit more popular than the wind model. Initial release, there was only the carbon surf and carbon wind model, and then the forged aluminum is basically the latest release, I think about 3-4 months ago or so. So starting with the evolution surf model, this is pretty much my go-to mast. I actually have two of these, one for prone foil and one for foil drive, although I mostly do foil drive only anyway. The unique feature of this is that there is a bit of a cutout section in the mast profile in the middle. So what this cutout section does is that because it has a little bit less area to move through the water, when you're turning and rolling or even just gliding straight forward, it just feels a lot more nimble. That is very noticeable when you're turning and rolling, and when you're gliding down, you can feel a little bit of a reduced drag from this less of the area from the cutout section. Super fun. It has been pretty much good for small days, big days, and everything. However, one of the downside is that on the bigger days, it definitely feels a little bit more twitchy and difficult to manage. It's pretty much that extra maneuverability that we get out of this cutout section kind of becomes a little bit of the negative and downside when it becomes a little bit more sizable surf, or if you are going fast with either tow or the wind, it might be a little bit challenging to manage with this cutout profile design. And onto the evolution wind model, you can see the design is basically the opposite of the evolution surf model. You can see instead of having the cut out, it actually extends out on the middle section of the mast profile. So what this extra cord lengths do is it really increases the stability. Kind of exact opposite of the surf. Instead of having that a quick nimble feel, all of the turns becomes a little bit more stable and a little bit slower. And also because of this extra cord length, I heard in higher speed you will likely to not hit the ventilation with this design, is what I heard. I basically picked it up because more or less I was just curious how much of the difference this cord design really makes, and it did make a huge difference. I actually only got to ride this mast with foil drive once, and that is actually the most popular video that I got to post yet. So maybe I should try this mast a little bit more, but it definitely felt really stable. Especially I like doing a little bit of the lock-in and glide kind of a ride in bigger days. For those kind of use case, this mast was really good. But yeah, the turning and rolling, it just becomes pretty slow and sluggish. So I ended up trying out that one session and then switched back to the surf model for my preference. And now this is basically my dedicated winning mast. So with the wind model, I definitely felt that extra stability this sticker cord side provides, while the surf model really fun but can be a little bit twitchy at times. So of course, because I already have the classic carbon that is basically just the straight line, I reached out to Kyle at Cedrus team to see if he has any plan to release the Evolution carbon line that is straight line. And his answer was no, there's no plan for the straight line Evolution line. However, because the new forged aluminum mast is basically exactly the profile that I am looking for, yeah, he offered to do the demo on this one. Is kind of how I ended up getting this prototype demo unit. And honestly, I was a little bit skeptical when I got this mast. Yeah, of course, I believe that it would have been a good mast. There was no doubt about that one. But I really didn't think I would like it more than the carbon mast. Yeah, because I think it's just a little bit of a bias that carbon mast is meant to be a little bit higher performing and yeah, a little bit lighter weight and all of that. Yeah, don't get me wrong, this aluminum mast is definitely heavier than this mast. Here are the weights for every models that I have. They're kind of all different length and different base plate and everything. So yeah, a little bit of a mix, but yeah, you can see the forged aluminum definitely is a bit of a heavier compared to the others. But with the foil drive specifically too, I don't think that extra weight is too big of a factor because the battery and the foil drive unit is already adding quite a bit of the weight. So just having maybe like 300-400 gram extra from changing from the carbon mast to aluminum was not that noticeable. And I think there can be almost an argument that a little bit of a heavier mast might be actually beneficial, especially for the foil drive use case. Because of the battery, the whole setup becomes pretty top heavy. So maybe there is a little bit of a benefit to bring the center of gravity down a little bit with the slightly heavier aluminum mast. That might be a bit of a controversial discussion that can be had there. Yeah, but more than anything, the stiffness was definitely something that I could notice one of the difference. One thing I really value about the Cedrus team is that they actually publish the comparison metrics of the stiffness among different mast brands. So from their measurement, this one was actually stiffer than the carbon mast, their own Cedrus carbon mast, but then also compared to many other carbon mast in the market too. The one really unique part of that blog post was how it's not really about just the bending stiffness, but also the torsional stiffness is another factor. And honestly, in terms of the bending stiffness, I think all of these masts are really amazing. I don't really feel much of the flex when in terms of the bending, but when I was just standing on the parking lot and doing a little bit of the torsional twist check, the carbon mast definitely was flexing a little bit more than this aluminum forged mast. More than anything, I think this forged aluminum mast is just like ridiculously stiff is kind of the feel that I had. So yeah, a little bit torn now after spending $5,000 or $6,000 on all of this carbon mast. Now I am full circle back to realizing that this aluminum mast is the one that I would like to have. have. Yeah, the main reason that I wanted to try this, that balanced feel between the wind and the surf, yeah, it really delivered that too. So yeah, I am seriously considering picking one up. One thing though, if you are using it for the foil drive, I think the Cedrus team is preparing the release of the integrated mast with foil drive. So yeah, maybe just give it another month or so you can check the price of the integrated mast and make the decision based on that. Even if it's not for just foil drive, I think this mast is just basically the best one you can get. I just can't see regretting having one of these forged masts ever. Yeah, all the benefits that I mentioned earlier, that brand comparability, you will basically never be outdated by committing to one of these forged aluminum masts. You can see they are always adding new brand support when it comes to the adapter. Price point, once again, is 1/3 of this carbon mast. I'm really glad we are finally starting to have a high performance aluminum affordable mast, because I think a lot of people are still hesitant to try foiling because of the cost part of it. It has been pretty expensive hobby for sure. So yeah, now knowing that I can just confidently recommend this aluminum mast to a beginner or whoever is curious about trying out the foiling, yeah, definitely this will be, I think, the go-to recommendation for anyone new for this hobby. I think that's everything I have to share today. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please hit the like and subscribe button. As you can see, it's still really tiny channel, so every like, every subscribe really helps this channel to grow. So yeah, really appreciate your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye!